Good morning, it's Tuesday the 21st of July. I'm Maret Gwyn and you're watching Europe Today, your morning dose of European news and analysis broadcast live from Brussels. Coming up on today's programme, UK Prime Minister Andy Burnham has unveiled his new cabinet, vowing sweeping political and economic reforms to restore stability in the UK and tackle the cost of living crisis. He also held first calls with US President Donald Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. We'll have more analysis for you. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has warned Iran it will pay many times over for the killing of US service members over the weekend. Iran's president has meanwhile declared his country is in a, quote, full-scale war as hopes of a return to negotiations continue to fade. And in other news, as Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky continues to grapple with fierce protests over the sacking of the former defense minister, there are reports that the country's commander-in-chief Oleksandr Syrsky could be dismissed imminently as a result of pressure from the demonstrators. But first, for our top story this morning, we're crossing to Spain, where the World Cup party shows no signs of stopping. Madrid was a sea of red and gold last night as almost 2 million people lined the streets to welcome home their World Cup heroes, with players celebrating on an open-top bus. Spain's latest World Cup triumph also cements their place as a dominant force in world football. They're European champions, Olympic champions, and now the first country ever to hold both the men's and women's World Cup crowns at the same time. Meanwhile, FIFA has opened an investigation into the Argentine team's post-match conduct. Midfielder Leandro Paredes was shown a red card after the final whistle after he took a hand to the throat of Spanish opponent Eric Garcia. As you can see, some violent scenes on your screens there. Remember, FIFA is already investigating Argentina over an incident involving a banner with a political message on the Malvinas or Falkland Islands as well. For more analysis on all of this, let's now bring in Jorge López Torrecilla and Pablo Montaño. They're both Spanish football journalists. Great to have you both with us. Let me come to you first, Jorge. We get the sense that there's a real collective generational talent in this Spanish team. Do you think we're entering another decade of Spanish domination?
I mean, there are certain points that allow us to think that way, not only because of after seeing that Spain was the most talented team during the World Cup, but also when you get to analyze the youth of the players, really the whole road that they have to come. They've just started their own careers, so there are certain points that get us to think that way. This is also going to be a very difficult road because, yes, there's also France, there's also Argentina, there are also other teams. So we could think that, and I think it's fair to think that way right after the World Cup, but I would rather wait and see.
Very careful words there. Pablo, coming to you next. For you, what is it that made this team click? Because there was certainly a sense of teamwork here. And would you say there's something cultural to this Spanish winning streak?
Yeah, I think it's the key thing about this Spanish national team is that there's no big stars. They have really big players, Lamine Yamal, Rodri Hernandez, Pau Cubarsí, but the difference from other national teams we saw in the World Cup, like France, that they had Kylian Mbappe, or Argentina, same with Lionel Messi. Spanish biggest star is the whole team because they work like an engine, perfect engine, because of the coach, because of the manager Luis de la Fuente. They feel, as the Luis de la Fuente, the coach says, as a family. They work as a club team during the whole season. And that's the principal and biggest key, that they will fight and they will play for each other, for the colleague. And no matter how many minutes they play, they will do and give their best.
And moving on, just to discuss Argentina a little bit, there was debate before the match, as you've mentioned, as to whether Spain's teamwork could overcome Messi's sort of individual genius. He is, after all, said, well, to be by many the greatest in history. And that was certainly the case. The Spanish teamwork did triumph in the end. Jorge, where do you think this game has left Argentine football? How difficult will it be for this team to come back strong?
I think that the main point now for Argentina is knowing which players are going to still be in the squad, because for most of them, this was their last dance. And once they clear which other players are going to be in the new squad, there's this new wave of young talent captained by Nico Paz, which had a really strong season at Como. But once we know if this was Messi's last game, not only that, but also Leandro Paredes, Nicolás Otamendi, there were so many players that feel like this was their last match. Argentina's game plan throughout this whole World Cup was just trying to make the opponents as uncomfortable as they possibly could. And that led them to the final. They were not strong enough, or they didn't have that confidence or that physical edge to top Spain. But I think there's a little bit more of a road to conquer for Argentina, considering that there's no World Cup in less than 4 years. So the main point now is knowing which players are going to be on that squad and who's going to be the manager, because Scaloni also said that he doesn't know what the future holds.
Indeed, and we saw a very emotional Scaloni in the recent days as well. Pablo, I know you're in London, and there is also scrutiny over the image that the Argentinian squad sent to the world from this tournament, including after the England match. You know, we saw that very political banner regarding the Islas Malvinas, the Falkland Islands, but also, of course, after the final, where we saw quite violent scenes. We know FIFA now investigating some of the players who seem to be, you know, taking a hand to the throat to some players of the Spanish squad. What do you think of this? Has it cast a shadow over this tournament and kind of has been a sour ending to see that kind of behaviour at the end?
I believe that there's many English fans that were supporting Spain in the final because what they saw and what we all saw in the semi-finals against the English national team was really similar to what happened in the final. That's why we could read in the newspapers and one of the biggest media in the UK, as the Telegraph, in Times, in BBC, that Argentinian players were told and said about them that they were like criminals, that they were about Argentine felony, thuggery, that they were quite tough because of their commitment and how they disrespect Spain in their celebration, and they were so critical, and that they didn't know how to lose, because as you need to know how to win, and I think Spain knew it. Argentina didn't know how to lose. They were world champions 4 years ago, and we could see some of these ways of being in the Argentinian players, and now we saw it again. But Lucian, that was the UK media. It's been so critical and so tough with Argentinian players.
Okay, that's all we have time for, I'm afraid. I'm sure we could continue speaking about this. Jorge and Pablo, thank you so much for your time this morning. To Germany next, where Chancellor Friedrich Merz has signalled he is open to reshuffling his government as he seeks to fill the vacancy left by his centre-right CDU party's parliamentary leader Jens Spahn. Spahn was forced to step down last week. To explain why and what this all means for the Chancellor, let's bring in Sonja Issel, our correspondent who's standing by in Berlin for us this morning. Sonja, great to see you. Talk us through this controversy first. Why was Jens Spahn forced to step down?
Good morning, Merit. Well, it was a fateful weekend for Friedrich Merz and the CDU. Like you already said, Jens Spahn, the leader of the parliamentary group, he had to step down due to a scandal. That scandal being that he recently became a father with his husband through a surrogate in the US. Now, the big problem is surrogacy is illegal in Germany, and Jens Spahn is one of the main supporters that wants this procedure to stay illegal within the country. Now, the fact that he went to the US to use surrogacy to start his own family caused a major backlash within the opposition parties, within his own party. People called him a hypocrite, and the pressure just kept on building until Friedrich Merz in the end had to ask him to step down.
And so, Sonia, what does all of this now mean for Merz and also for the shape of his government?
Well, the pressure is on for Friedrich Merz now. He has to refill this position as soon as possible because we have very important state elections in Germany in about 2 months. And he already said that he might be open to some drastic steps. He might be open to reshuffling the whole government just to fill this one position, which again shows us how important the role of a parliamentary leader really is in Germany. And there are several names being thrown around at the moment. One of them being Alexander Dobrindt. He is the interior minister at the moment. The other one is Thorsten Frey. He's the chancellery minister. So both of them already have a very important role within the government. And if Merz chooses either of them, he will have to replace them as well. Like I already said, this whole thing couldn't come at a worse time as well, because we have these very important state elections in September. And it is now very much a big scandal. And Friedrich Merz would probably rather focus on these elections because the CDU is not in a very good position. If we look at the polls, the far-right AfD, they are at around 40% in some of these states. The CDU is only at around 20%. So Friedrich Merz would probably rather focus on these elections. Instead, he's dealing with a major personnel crisis.
OK, Sonia, thank you so much for that analysis for us from Berlin, and we'll keep an eye out on that developing story here on Euronews. But now we're heading to the UK, where Andy Burnham walked through the black door of number 10 Downing Street yesterday and delivered his first address to the nation as Prime Minister. In that speech, he promised to be a circuit breaker for Britain, pledging a new political and economic direction after years of instability.
Britain needs to show the world that we can regain our stability once again. And that is our challenge, to make politics work, to make it work better. I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better.
Burnham also later in the day unveiled his new cabinet. John Healey, who recently resigned as Defence Secretary in protest over defence spending plans, becomes Chancellor of the Exchequer. Wes Streeting, who also resigned as Starmer's Health Secretary, is also back in government and becomes the new Defence Secretary. For more on all of this, I'm joined now by Professor Tony Travers from the London School of Economics. Very good to see you this morning. First of all, could you just share with us your view on this new Burnham cabinet? What does it say about his vision for this next government?
Well, the people he's chosen include many have been in this government since his predecessor, Keir Starmer, was elected in 2024. And some of them have a history going back even to the Tony Blair, Gordon Brown era of British politics when Labour was in power up to 2010. So it's a balance between those with some experience and bringing in new people, loyalists really to Andy Burnham, some of whom have also been in the Keir Starmer government. So I don't think it's a tilt particularly to the left, or the right within British politics. What it is an attempt to reassure the markets with the appointment of John Healey, as you say, the former Defence Secretary, as the Chancellor of the Exchequer. That's the UK's Finance Minister. And Wes Streeting, who had, as you say, resigned as the Defence Secretary with Ed Miliband as Foreign Secretary. So it's recognisable to politicians in Europe and beyond, people they will know, but in different jobs.
Indeed. And in terms of the message that Burnham is now sending to international partners, including in Europe, what does it say to them bringing John Healey into number 11 after he had, of course, previously resigned in protest over low defence spending plans?
Well, clearly he's there to convince the markets, and the bond markets in particular, that a Burnham government is not going to break the so-called fiscal rules in the UK. It's not going to increase borrowing and do anything that will alarm the money markets. So I think that's the signal that's being sent there. There's a lot of discussion who'd be in this position. I think beyond that, what they're trying to do is to give a bit of a sense that there'll be more popular changes that will affect people. So, for example, a cut in value-added tax on fuel next winter, but costed in a way that doesn't, as I say, make the markets think this government will be less fiscally responsible than its predecessor.
And Tony, very little in Burnham's first speech really on foreign or European policy. He did have a call with the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen last night, and they've both vowed to work towards a summit on UK-EU relations later this year. Do you expect Burnham to give this reset with the EU the same dedication, the same energy as Keir Starmer previously did?
Oh, I think he'll probably give it more energy. I think more in favour. When he was mayor of Greater Manchester, he made a number of statements that were much closer, or suggesting a much closer relationship between the UK and the EU than I think Keir Starmer, who was really quite cautious about it, didn't want to upset public opinion. Public opinion has moved on to some extent. There's now a majority polling shows for a closer relationship between the UK and the EU. So it'll be interesting to see how far Andy Burnham is prepared to go. And of course, how far will the EU be prepared to go? It'll be a negotiation. But I think this signals a slightly closer relationship between the UK and the EU than Keir Starmer would have wanted.
OK, Professor Tony Travers, that's all we have time for this morning. But thank you so much for sharing your insights with us on Europe Today. Now we're moving on again to Budapest, where there is a little bit of a reshuffle, we might say, there as well. So yesterday, just hours after Prime Minister Péter Magyar publicly called on chess icon Judith Polgár to become the country's next president, she politely declined that invitation, saying the responsibility of healing a divided Hungary was simply too great for her. An interim president is now in post, and that's, of course, after the Orbán-appointed president previously resigned. That was under pressure from Prime Minister Magyar, who'd been campaigning to remove him from office. Now, I believe we can now cross over to our correspondent, Zoltán Sziposegi, who is standing by for us in the Hungarian capital of Budapest this morning. Zoltán, really good to see you. Maybe tell us first, what do we know so far about this interim president who's now in post, and when will she eventually have to be replaced?
Good morning, Europe. So in the Hungarian politics, nothing looks like as it seems, because it wasn't actually a resignation. Just Tamás Súlyog, the ex-president, realized that he has no other choice than signing the 17th Amendment of the Constitution. So it ended his term. The House Speaker automatically, according to the Constitution, steps forward as a president, and Agnes Forshofer's career is skyrocketing because just 2 years ago he wasn't elected even to the assembly of a small countryside town. She joined to the TISA party in 2025, and now a week ago she was House Speaker, and now she is a president. But just an interim for 30 days. The government is searching another interim president, actually, because they promised that they will change.
And very, very briefly, Zoltán, how much of a knock to Magyar? I believe we've lost Zoltán there. But thank you so much for your time this morning. I'm sure we'll bring you more on that story from Budapest in the future on Euronews. But that's all we have time for this morning. Remember, we'll be back at the same time and the same place tomorrow. So we hope to see you then. Take care and see you soon.